Right. So today we'll get started with actual SQL queries and all. Okay. So first we discuss what are the different SQL types. Okay. I mean, depends on the actions they do. Okay. And then we talk about the basics of writing SQL queries. I mean, the rules we need to follow. And then we'll start with some simple queries actually. Okay. Okay. First thing, so the different SQL types, right? One thing, I'll make it as a comment. So this is like a comment again. We discussed, right? Comments in Linux. So, but in comments in SQL, we have two types. Okay. So let's say I have a query. Right. And now if I place two dashes, right, that will become a comment again. So if you execute, nothing, it won't happen anything. Okay. And if you wanted to have multiple line comments, so we can use this way. All right. Right. Okay. So basically there are four different types overall. Okay. DDLs, DML, DCL, and one more last one is TCL. Okay. So this is stands for, data definition language. And by default, it is auto commit. So this would be an interview question. And data manipulation language. So explicit commit. So you need to hit commit or rollback if you wanted to save the changes or undo the changes. Okay. Rollback. Okay. And DCL, right? This is data control language. So it's nothing but, if we have some tables or some users, okay? And if you wanted to grant permissions or remove the permissions, we'll be using this. Basically, there are only two commands, grant or revoke. Transaction control language, okay? And this is nothing but, in a DML, right? We have commit and rollback. These two comes under TCL, and there is something like save point as well, okay? Overall, so depends on what the commands to do. So they grouped into these four different types. So data definition language, right? So basically these queries will be used to create, drop, alter, truncate, like commit. So these are all comes under DDL. Okay. So it's like create, alter, drop, comment, truncate. And one more thing, rename. Okay. These all commands comes under DDL. Okay. So why it is? So what does this create will do? They will do create tables, and this is to modify table or columns or anything. and this is so delete table. I would say delete complete table, including the metadata, what the structure and the data. Structure and data. Okay. So on table, but on column, we can delete a column on the table. And this is, just a comment. So in some cases, if you wanted to add some description on the table or a column, right, you can add this comment. And truncate, so it will delete all the data in the table. Okay. So when we hit truncate table, right? So it will delete all the table, but table will remain exist in the database. Okay. And rename, so it will rename table or column. Okay. So the self-explanatory, most of them, but there is a difference between delete and truncate. So it is an famous interview question. What is the difference between drop, delete, truncate? Okay, we'll discuss that as well. And in this is DML. Okay, so DML, data manipulation language. Actually, we also have one thing, DQL. Okay, data query language. This is simple select queries, select classes. So here, right, in a DML, so we have insert, update, delete, merge. Yeah, that's it. 4 commands. So insert, this will used to add or insert rows or data into the table. Okay, and update, so to modify existing data in the table. And delete, so this is to delete or remove existing data the table. See, merge is very different. Okay, so basically merge nothing but, so at the same time you can update or delete more than one table at the same time. Okay, so right, so why we call it as a DML, because everything comes here, and whenever you execute something that changes the data in the table, so it will manipulate something, so that's the reason that is grouped as DMLs. And again DCL, so these are the only two commands, query classes that we have, grant or revoke. Grant nothing but we are giving permission to someone, and revoke nothing but we are whatever the existing permissions that we will be removing or deleting those permissions on the user. And transaction control language, so we have these 3 basically: commit, rollback, save point. So commit nothing but whenever we execute some DML statement, okay, like maybe I inserted some rows into the table, and if I don't hit commit, right, it will not be saved into the database permanently. So until the session that exists, you can see the differences, modifications on the table, but they will not be saved. If you wanted to save those changes that you did, okay, we need to use commit. It simply just is, nothing, only commit. That's it. Execute, commit complete, rollback. That's a rollback complete. Nothing else, only the simple commit or rollback. And again, this save point, right? Save point nothing but let's say, so let's say you have query 1 and query 2, and maybe you enable save point 1 here. Okay, and maybe you have some other queries. Okay, you wrote some queries and here you wanted to commit save point 1. So what happens, whatever the the queries that are in line with the save point 1, these are all the queries will be committed, but this will not be committed. So if you wanted to commit only few queries are that are executed, so we can use save point, and from that save point onwards you can commit the transactions. Okay, and we have the last one is a DQL. So this is a very famous that used in everywhere, select. So this is used to retrieve the data from database. Okay, and we'll be discussing a lot on the select, and this is our main agenda, and then we'll go with these DMLs very at the end of the sessions. Okay, maybe very last 2 or 1 classes that will complete DDL and DML, but most of the cases we'll be using this select. How efficiently we can retrieve the data from databases, and what are the different ways, how to filter data, how to group, and how to aggregate. Okay, and some analytical functions. Okay, that all we discuss. It will be kind of very deep dive sessions on this SQL. Okay, I'll stop for a minute. If you have any questions, let me know. No questions? Guys, have a question? You don't have questions?
No questions.
No questions, sir.
Okay. All right. Now, the rules. Do you able to see the screen? Is it visible correctly? Whatever that
Yes.
I am writing. Is it
Yes,
clear?
sir. Yes.
Let me try if I can increase the font. All right. Good, right? Now, the rules. How to write. Okay. So, first thing, the first point, SQL statements, right? Not case sensitive. So that means, you can write in any case. Select star from, employees. This would give us a result, and we have a case toggle here, so we can just change the case. Okay, it changed like this. Now if you execute, still gives the results. And if you even give all uppercase or all lowercase, doesn't matter. So whatever the case that is, so you'll get the results anyway. Okay. All right. And the queries can span into multiple lines as well. Okay, so that means you can execute this way as well. It works, but again there is a if I execute, this will not work. Okay, so why it is means keywords should not be span across multiple lines, or they should not be separated into multiple lines. Okay, and there are something called clauses. Okay, clauses should start with new line. See, these are just uh, rules to write the queries efficiently or improve the readability and best practices. But it's not mandatory. If you wanted to write some queries on your way, you can do it, but it is always good to follow the best practices. Okay, that will give us the readability on the query. See, if I am doing this, okay, maybe it's good. Okay, but when we do some complex joins, and the query will be having maybe 20 to 30 lines, and if you put like whatever the format that you want, maybe if you are the creator of that query, you might understand it, but the other person who is using that, right, he may not get what you're doing that query. So that's the reason it is always good to follow the best practices, and that will provide a readability point of view to the users. Okay, you're getting me, right, what I'm saying? And so see, semicolon, right, this is a semicolon. So semicolons are optional, but however, if you are executing multiple statements at the same time, so we should use this one. Let's say I wanted to execute these two, otherwise select star from countries. Now I don't have any semicolon here, SQL command not properly entered. But for us, right, these are two valid queries, right? Valid or not? We just executed both of them. And even, we can execute this. But when we combine all of them, right, it's not executed because, as I'm saying, when we are trying to execute multiple statement, we should put them or end them with a semicolon. Now the two will be executed back to back. See, that's how it works. Okay. Here we have this, both are there. See, the two will be executed one after the other. One is here, one is here, right? Both are executed. But if you remove the semicolon, so that gives us an error because it will not be able, it will treat entire these three lines as a single query. In that case, select star from employee, select star from country. So it's really confused and the syntax is not correct. That will throw an error. This is a semicolon, right? And in some cases, whenever your query is, like 10 to 15 lines, so it is good to use indentation to give more readability. Okay, I'll tell you an example. Here, it's like this. So, and then wherever you're writing some joins, you'll be having one more extra line here. And if there is a condition, right? Maybe you'll be starting from the, maybe you give a tab and then start the conditions again. So that will give us a more readability. I'll explain this maybe when we are talking about joins. So the big queries that we run. Okay. Any questions here on the rules? Are you clear on this one? Guys, are you clear?
Yes, sir.
All right. So again, there is something called null values. So it is important to understand what is null. So because null. So maybe you might be always confused maybe in your college days or something. But if you are working, you might know what is null. But for others, it will be very difficult for them. What is, null and what is empty, right? See, null is nothing. Okay, it's not a value. So basically, this is something unavailable or unassigned or not assigned, or we can also known as unknown or inapplicable. NA, so simple NA, not applicable. It's not a value basically. Okay, and it's not a zero or empty. Both. It's not empty or it's not zero. And so when we get these null values, right? Whenever if there is no data for that specific column or missing data, so that is treated as null. Okay. And again, so we have data types here as well. So let's say number, char, varchar. There are many like blob, varchar2. So these are all different data types. Okay, and any data type can have null values. Okay, clear? And one more thing. So if you wanted to prevent adding null values into your table, we can do that using not null constraint. So whenever we create a table and we can add on the column level constraint. So if you don't want to have null values in that particular column, we can use not null. Okay. Let's see if we have any. I'll just describe employees. See, this is a not null, right? So this is a not null. This is a not null. If you try to insert any not null values into this one, so it will give us an error and it will not allow us to insert the data. Okay, this is a constraint basically. So what I did, so this is a describe table DAC command. We can also use describe as well. Both works. I'll clear this and rerun. Okay. So it will give us the same. So describe and DAC both are same. It will give us the same result and it's having the same behavior. So describe nothing but it will give us the definition of the table that we created. So which will give us column names, constraints, and the data type. See, these are the data types. Number of 6, that's nothing but you can insert any number, okay, from 0 to what is the length that is allowed? This one. Okay, so that is a meaning of this data type, number of 6. And if there is number 8 comma 2, that's nothing but with these 8 numbers, there are 2 decimal points that are allowed. Okay, and this is the date, and then varchar 2 of 20, which will allow alphanumeric values up to 20 characters. Nothing but 20 letters in Navy words. Okay. So I'll give you these notes every day like this only. I'll execute what are the queries and the same queries will be shared with you like daily notes. Describe, okay, which gives table details like column names, constraints, data types, right? Any question again on the null values? So describe is very simple, but you should be very careful when we are dealing with null values. So null values, again, we cannot compare with a equal, okay, cannot be compared. Okay, like we cannot use these symbols. Is than or equal or greater than equal or these symbols will not be working with the null values. So to deal with the null values, if we wanted to check if the value is null or not, we can use is null or is not null clauses we use. And there are some functions like NVL and NVL2. So which deals with null values. Again, there is another function coolies. Okay, but we will discuss all of this with examples, no worries. So this is just your for your information. So we have these is null, is not null to compare and to replace nulls with any value, we use NVL and NVL2. Okay, and the coolies, right? This is very simple. So it will accept multiple parameters, and within that parameters, it will reverse. So which is a first non-null value that will give us as a result. This is a function. Basically, these are functions in SQL, but we will look into all of this. Okay, I'll stop for a minute for any questions. Let me know. Or if you don't have questions, so say it that you don't have questions. We'll proceed with the next thing. No questions? Guys, are you listening or I'm speaking on mute?
No question.
Yeah, you should tell me at least if you don't have questions, right? All right, so we will jump into this topic now. So SQL statements. So that too, select statement. Okay, so we can categorize this into three basically. We can depends on the the result that we wanted. So something called projection. Okay, and then selection, and then joins. Okay, what is projection? What is selection? What are joins? Right. So it is like, I have a table. Okay. So when I hit this, we got all the columns in the result, right? But this is called a selection because we are whenever the selection is happening on the all rows basically. This is a selection because whenever the query that gets all the columns and all the rows, that's called selection. The projection nothing but we will select only required columns. Let's say employee ID and first name, last name. Okay, this is called a projection because we will be selecting or we are selecting only required columns. But which is recommended? All columns are required columns. So basically, we always recommend select whatever that you needed. Don't select everything. Okay, why? Let's say this table is very small. Maybe it has having like 107 records. But in real time, when you are working on a project in a company, right? It must be having millions or some multi-million records. If you simply hit select a star from the table, the query engine will sleep like anything. So that will take infinite time to give you the result. So that is the reason. So it is always recommended to use the columns or rows. You need to filter every time. Okay. So again, so this is an example of a projection. Projection nothing but, this is a table. Okay. Projection is always on a column. This is a projection. We are selecting a column completely. Okay. And the selection nothing but, this is a vertical, right? This is a horizontal. Okay. So this is a selection. We are selecting these 5 or 6 records. That is called selection. It's nothing but, so we are selecting the rows in the table and that are given by the query. That's what the selection. Selection nothing but, so selecting rows from the query. Okay. And again, so we should always use filters to query only required data. This is always recommended. Maybe you can use select a star in this HR database. This is very small, maybe like 1 MB, not even 1 MB idea, I think, maybe less than 1 MB data only, including all the tables that it has. But when we are using production databases, right? So the data will be huge, table will be weak, and never use select star. Star is killing the resources, and that will, impact the other users that are using that database. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Guys, are you clear what I'm saying? So this is important to know.
Yes, sir.
So, when you join a company and you start working on that, right? So be careful when you're writing select stars. People doesn't know that the each and every query that you execute, that will be logged into a separate database. Who is running what? You know, people also monitor those kind of audit logs, audit tables, and they'll come and give you warnings as well. Don't use these kind of queries. All right. And joins. So joins nothing but, so we are, if you wanted to query multiple tables, so we'll be using joins. Query data from multiple tables, right? So the SQL statements depends on the behavior, right? We can group into three projections, which will be a column based selection. Basically, we will be selecting only the columns that we needed, and the selection, the row wise queries that we use, and the joins. So most of the queries will include these three. So we select few columns, filtering the rows, and doing some joins. So the best practice is always select what is required. Don't select everything. Okay. And for projection, so how to select the columns that we needed? So we can just simply write in the query. So this way. So select. Okay. And the syntax, for selecting, simple. Select and star, basically either of the one, star or list of column names. List of column names separated by comma. Okay. And then there is a from class followed by table name. But the best practice is always we use database name, DB name dot the table name. The reason is maybe if you wanted to create something or you want to read some data from other tables, maybe when we are working in a project, right, you will be dealing with multiple databases, right? And if you don't mention the database name, so if there is a same table that is in a, HR database and something is in a projects database, right? So the query or the query engine doesn't know which table has to be used, right? So that is the reason we need to use this format. This is called fully qualified name. Okay, basically this will be having database name and then table name. In some cases, let's say it is a Snowflake, there is a database followed by schema. Within the schema, will be having table. In that case, database name dot schema dot table name. That way we need to use. Nothing but table is a member of this database. That's how the query engine will identify and use the table for that specific query. And again, so here we have where class to filter the data. This is optional again, not mandatory, and the condition. Simple basically, but if you go and refer the SQL documentation, it will give you a broad way of using the select. Select will also having this aggregations, group bys, and everything. But that time we'll discuss the things. So if I add everything here, that will be very confused. So I don't want to do that. Okay. Now, so any questions so far?
No, sir.
All right. Now, so let's start with some, very basic SQL statements. I'll start with, we'll go step by step. First, we'll start with column alias. Okay. What is column alias? So I'll give you an example. Let's start from employees. Column alias and, table alias as well. See what it is saying, table or view does not exist. That means I was giving incorrect table name. That's the reason it is giving us result error. So in SQL developer, there is a shortcut when you can select the query and use Control Enter to execute the query. That is one way. Otherwise, you can run here. This is a run button. Okay, and this is a commit. If you are seeing my screen, this is a commit button. This is a rollback, and this the last one A, you see upper A and the lower A, right? So that will toggle your query. You can select the query, then press this, so it will change one by one. Okay, and this one give you history of what we executed so far. Okay, got it? So from from long back onwards, I'm executed all this basically. You can do that as well. And this is SQL star worksheet. Okay, so the explain plan is here. I was telling you yesterday, right? So we can see how the table will be executed. Options full and cardinality nothing but number of rows in the table and the cost. So this is very simple select statement basically. DB version parse schema is in HR, and then so it is looking at the hash, the index basically. And as we are using star, it is showing all rows. Okay, that's it. That's a way that is executed, but this is not much helpful now because we are only querying one table. But when we execute the join statements with the multiple conditions or multiple join conditions, that time, so this will be helpful. How your query is getting executed, what are the records getting fetched. So it will give that information to tune the queries. Okay, and the connections. This is like a small tour of this SQL developer in the connections. You have this SQL, database connections. And when you expand this, you see many of this, right? This is tables, then views. So we have only one view here. So let's say I have this view. And if you go to select SQL, right? And it will give us how this view is created. What are the columns involved, how the select queries happen. Create a replace. Okay, force view HR.employee details, and it is from employees, department, jobs, location, everything, and these are the conditions. And these are the columns that he used from the different. Okay, so again, view is nothing but a simple select query. This is a select query only. Okay, and that one. And again, these are indexes, packages, procedure, functions, and everything. So for us, this is really not required. This package, procedure, function, and everything. We are purely interested on SQLs. Okay, because as a data engineer, so it is good for you to understand what is happening in the function or procedures, but it's not required for you to go and write these procedures or functions. So we do not do that. This is only this procedures or functions we write, but that are user defined functions in Hive or somewhere else. But I will teach you in that way. But here in SQL we do not use this function. Basically, that comes into PL SQL. PL SQL will not be using anywhere. Okay, unless you go and do that in Snowflake. During Snowflake, we'll discuss that. And users, whatever the users that are there, you can see it here. Okay, because this is HR, we don't see that. But if I expand this admin, you'll be seeing multiple users, including HR, and then practice one, and everything. Okay, so that is a simple tour of this. This is this binocular symbol, nothing but search. Okay, find objects. All right. Now, so we will discuss this aliases and then close our class for today. And tomorrow onwards, we'll discuss more details on the SQLs. Again, so what is alias? Basically, in a real world, right? What is alias? You must be reading in the newspapers, right? Some name, alias, some name, right? What is it? So come on, guys, it's very simple. It's a real-time question only, right? So alias, maybe in other words, people will be having their own nicknames, right? So it is a similar concept here. So let's say okay, so I have this phone number. Okay, let's say employee ID, and I would like to select first name and then phone number from employees. So this is giving me 3 columns because I selected 3 columns. Now instead of this phone number, I wanted to display this one as mobile number. Right now, to display this as a mobile number, I can use mobile number. Okay, now that has been changed from phone number to mobile number. See what I'm doing. This is an actual column name that is in the table, but when we are querying it, we are renaming that to mobile number. When we use this as an alias, this will not affect the actual data that is already there in the table. That means, if I remove this, the phone number will be still there. But when I use this, it only changed during the query results. That's it. That is the scope of this change or alias. Okay. It will not change the column name in the table. Okay. It will only change the query result header. That's it. To rename column header a query result. Okay. Again, why do we use this? To remove ambiguity. Ambiguity, nothing but confusion. Okay. I'll tell you an example. Let's say I have an employee ID here, and also I have a department, right? if the departments table also having some employee ID, and when I wanted to select both of them, there is an ambiguity, right? So which employee ID that I am picking? So in that case, on the fly in the queries, we can rename those columns. We can do like employee EMP ID then or department employee ID. So whatever that we can do. Remove the ambiguity, we use column renames. So what is the syntax again? The alias, right? Alias name immediately followed by the actual column name, the query. Okay. Otherwise, there is other way. So we can also use as. This also works. Optionally, we can use as keyword. I'm putting it in a single quote as keyword. Okay. And so we can also use so this is an example one. Okay. And another example is we can use without as keywords as well. Can use like this. The other way, if you want to use, I want to use mobile number double quote. See, so this one, right? This is a different case again. Okay. So whenever, if I wanted to, maintain case sensitivity, maintain the case, right? Case nothing but lower case or uppercase. Okay, lower or uppercase. Case, we can enclose alias name in double quotes. Okay, clear, right? So this is an example of it. Okay. So this is all about column alias. So we discussed with a few examples. So we can use as keyword, and this can be worked without as well. So doesn't matter if you use as or if you don't use as, it doesn't matter. But see, it is good to use as, that is readable in case actually. So it's good to maintain the readability and add the as keyword, but it's optional again. Right. Now, with this simple one, can I select these columns in a random order? Because I am selecting the order they are correctly in the table, right? Employee ID first, then first name, after that some columns, then we have phone number. Can I select this phone number first? Is it possible, guys? Yes or no? This is possible. We can select the columns in any order that we wanted, any random order. Okay. And again, so we discussed all these things about the column alias, and I told you there is something called table alias as well, right? What is it? Table alias is same, so it is just followed by the table name. That's it. There is no as or something. It should be simply like this. Table name, then a space, then the alias name that we want. So basically, this is used in a large queries, okay, to see in our cases, right, we have only the small names as a table names, but every time if you wanted to write or type this, right, it's very hard for us, right? So that's the reason. So basically, most of the times, this table alias are used to, to write the queries fast. And also, if there are any tables are having same name across different databases, in that way, when we using aliases, we can create alias with the different names so that we can separate the database table names across multiple databases. So I'll tell you an example. We have a database DB1 and then DB2. Okay. Now this is like, I'll take an example of a company. Maybe they have different LOBs and it has different LOB, but it follows into the same structure, like same table name, like, LOB1, okay, LOB2. Here also we have employee. But, whenever I wanted to query these two tables from these two databases, right? So it would be very confusing, right? To use EMP, right? That's the reason you can say LOB, EMP, maybe LOB nothing but LOB2 as an alias and LOB1 as an alias. This is an alias. So this way we can separate or distinguish the tables in the joins when we are using multiple tables in the queries, right? Similar to this one only. So if you wanted to use a different name instead of original name, you can also use this. That is an alias. So this doesn't change anything. It will still give us a result again. But usually when we have this alias here, right? So it's like we'll be writing the query like this. So to get the columns, we use alias dot column name. The same result. It doesn't change. Okay. That is a table alias. For table alias, we don't use this as keyword. Okay. All right. Any questions? Guys, any questions? So these are just very basics that we discussed, and at the same time, very important. So, there are many questions that you can get from an interview perspective. I told you, right? Drop, truncate, and delete, and merge as well. So the interviewer may be asking you, I have two tables and I wanted to update both of them at the same time. So how can I do that? Can you use merge? And what is the difference between this truncate, drop, and delete? So we will cover in maybe upcoming classes, but you need to remember what are these all are actually. In a DDL, what comes? DML, what comes? This is also an interview question. Okay. Anyhow, so that's it for today. So we covered a very basics. At the same time, they're important as well. I'm repeating again. So any questions, let me know before we close our class. No questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So that's it for today. So see you maybe tomorrow. We don't